All right, students, now that we understand why we need to find the least common denominator of two fractions, let's go ahead and do some examples. Let's write 1/2 and 1/3 with a common denominator. So some fractions, when the denominators are nice and small, we can do this pretty easily. You try to think of a number that both 2 and 3 both go into. So the first number that comes to my head is 6. So 2 goes into 6 and 3 also goes into 6. All right, so to write 1/2 as an equivalent fraction with denominator 6, you have to think about what number, what factor you have to multiply 2 by to get 6. So that factor in this case is 3, and whatever you multiply the denominator by, you also multiply the numerator by. So I'll do 2 times 3 to get 6, which will force me to also do 1 times 3. So 1/2 becomes 3/6, which should make sense. 3/6 is the same as 1/2. So similarly, we'll do that with 1/3 as well. What do you have to multiply 3 by to get 6? Times 2. So whatever you do to the denominator, also do to the numerator. Times 2 times 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. And we've converted these two fractions so that they have the same denominator. Next example, let's look at 7/12 and 5/18. We want to write these with a common denominator. So this one's a little bit harder for me to think of off the top of my head. What number do both 12 and 18 go into? So in this case, I will use this procedure that we learned in, I think it was chapter 3, where we find the prime factorization of my numbers. 12 can be factored as 4 times 3. 3 is prime. 4 can be factored as 2 times 2. And the number 18 can be factored as 2 times 9. 2 is prime. And 9 can be broken down to 3 times 3. All right, and now I can go ahead and find what, and line up my factors so I can build a number that both 12 and 18 go into. So 12 can be written 2 times 2 times 3. And 18 can be written 2 times 3 times 3. And I'm going to line my factors up like so. So what factors do they have? Or let's build a number that has all the factors of 12 and also has all the factors of 18. So I'll need a 2 and another 2 and 2 factors of 3. 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. Multiply all that together, you get 36. So this will be our least common, the least common multiple of these two numbers, which is 36. So now I know that both 12 and 18 divide into the number 36. So I can go ahead and write 7/12 with a denominator of 36 and 5/18 with a denominator of 36. So you need to look at the number 7/12 and ask yourself, what did I have to multiply 12 by to get 36? So what factor is missing here? 12 was 2 times 2 times 3, and 36 was 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. Oh, I was only missing that number 3, that factor 3. So that's one way I can look at the prime factorization and help me to figure out what I have to multiply by. So 12 times 3 is 36. 7 times 3 is 21. So 7/12 becomes 21/36. Same thing here with 5/18. Let's look at 18, which is 2 times 3 times 3. And 36 is 2 times 2 times 3 times 3. What factor do I need to multiply 18 by to get 36? Just that missing factor of 2. So times 2 times 2. 5 times 2 is 10. 18 times 2 is 36. And I've converted these numbers to fractions with the same denominator. Perfect. Let's do another example. 1/4 and 1/6 with a common denominator. And again, we like to write it with the least common denominator. These numbers are pretty small, so I can think of a couple numbers that they both go into, like 4 and 6 both multiply together to give you 24. But there's a smaller number that they also go into, and that's the number 12. So I'm going to write 1/4 with a denominator of 12, and I'll write 1/6 with a denominator of 12. So 4 times what equals 12? The missing factor is 3. So times 3 times 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 4 times 3 is 12. All right, and over here, what do I multiply 6 by to get 12? The missing factor is 2. 6 times 2, 1 times 2. So 1 times 2 is 2, 6 times 2 is 12. There we have it. My fractions are converted. All right, let's do one more example. Let's write 8/15 and 11/24 with a common denominator. And again, this one's hard for me to just think of the number off of the top of my head that they both divide into. So I will write 15 in its prime factored form. 15 is 3 times 5. That one's easy. And 24 can be broken down 6 times 4. 6 is 2 times 3, which are both prime. 4 is 2 times 2, which are both prime. So now 15 could be written as 3 times 5. I know that I'm going to leave some space for some 2's, and then a 3 and a 5. And 24 can be written as 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. So what's their least common multiple? Let's go ahead and build the number that has all the factors of 15 and also all the factors of 24. So that'll be 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 5. All right, so that'll be 120 if you multiply all that together. So 15 divides into 120, and 24 goes into 120. So now let's go ahead and look at the factorization. Think, what do I have to multiply 15 by to get that factor of 120? 15. The missing factors here. 15 is 3 times 5. The 120 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 3 times 5. So I'm missing all these 2's. 2 times 2 times 2, that's 8. So, and a calculator, for these types of problems, your calculator should be able to help you. You could also get that 8 by doing 120 divided by 15. So I know I'm going to have to multiply that by 8. Also multiply numerator by 8. So to write 8/15 with a denominator of 120, the numerator would have to be 8 times 8, which is 64. All right, now let's look at the number 24. 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. The only factor that I'm missing here is 5. So I'll have to do 24 times 5, and also the numerator times 5, 11 times 5. So 11/24 can be written as 11 times 5, which is 55, over 24 times 5, which is 120. And our fractions are now written with the same denominator. All right, in the next video, we'll do a few examples where we add fractions together with unlike denominators using this whole procedure.